What if Darth Vader, the deadliest and most powerful weapon of the Galactic Empire, was forced to hunt the god-alien clan of the Otsutsuki, who literally purge entire planets to consume its life force? Could the Dark Lord prevent Otsutsuki invasion throughout the Empire, facing off against fighters like Kaguya, Momoshiki, and Isshiki? Well, let's find out. Upon Black Zetsu betraying the legendary Madoru Uchiha, another unfathomable monster would appear, one with so much chakra Madoru's body would explode due to its inability to withstand such life force. Kaguya had arrived. The once thought invincible mother of chakra, who is supposedly sealed in eternity by the Sage of Six Paths himself, is back and ready to reclaim her land. However, with Naruto and Sasuke being there to stop her, she would completely switch the dimensional time-space. This space-time dimension being arguably the smallest of Kaguya's created time-spaces, which, from what we know, houses at least an entire planet, likely covered in lava and volcanoes, with a castle unironically resembling Darth Vader's Mustafar castle, but whatever. The size of this dimension, along with her other created dimensions, is contentious, as there is no direct measure to justify how large you would say they are, and if they are either a universe or a small solar system in size. Each dimension is shown verbatim to have a light source, with the potential exception of the aforementioned lava dimension. However, her ice dimension could make up for that, as in the anime it houses not only a moon orbiting another moon, but also a complete night sky, which could highlight the intent for a universal level space. Other dimensions all also manage to have a star at bare minimum, as displayed verbatim when Sasuke is walking through her dimension with a star in the sky in the day Naruto became Hokage OVA, meaning there's at least a planet and star in every one of, and if you were to count all these celestial bodies from her dimensions, you'd probably conclude there are 3 moons, 4 stars, and 7 planets as a baseline in the manga alone. While the debate of Kaguya's role in literally creating all these dimensions is scourged with discourse, her expanding truth-seeking orb was going to completely destroy her Genesis dimension, and potentially therefore the others to follow. However, Kaguya's strongest attack is actually the 80 Gods Vacuum Fist that was used on Naruto as stated in the 4th databook, despite her expanding truth-seeking orb being the move, believed to be capable of destroying a literal solar system. A young, six-path Sage Mode Naruto would be capable of briefly stalemating this whilst trying his utmost when Kaguya was smiling. This theme of Naruto being a low end relative to Kaguya and her techniques remained consistent with him being able to literally hold her dimensional breaches briefly before they closed. And through the battle, Naruto could acclimate progressively to where his shadow clones could then blast through her vacuum fist, screaming that this is his time space. And despite Naruto rivaling attacks with enough force to destroy solar systems, he still wouldn't be strong enough to battle either Momoshiki or Isshiki to follow, seeing as Sasuke, when investigating the existence of another Otsutsuki, concludes they might be beings that would even threaten Kaguya's existence, which is later confirmed as true, hence to why Kaguya amassed an army of 100,000 strong of White Zetsu, which sure suck alone, but they can individually each match the chakra volume of Kisame, who has the largest reserves in the entire Akatsuki, which is also likely even above the continental obliterating Bijou. The White Zetsu can also merge countless together to create literal monsters. So Momoshiki would even be vastly above Kaguya in terms of his sheer power, which is very fitting, seeing as Momoshiki's subordinate partner Kinshiki is stated to have the power to split worlds. Momoshiki's power being this much greater than Kaguya's if you account for his ability to drain chakra from a star in a parallel universe he himself created, as shown through the novels. Now, while the canonicity remains questionable, it does still stand as another potential route to argue these Otsutsuki to be universal in power. Naruto now in just his base state would be able to keep up with his Momoshiki even better than how he kept up with Kaguya in his 6-path Sage Mode state, showing just how strong Naruto has grown throughout the years. Naruto still, though, with such growth, could barely put a scratch on Isshiki even with not only his full power, but Sasuke to aid him as well, where Isshiki would require Baryon mode to defeat, which requires his chakra to undergo a process similar to nuclear fusion, which you can potentially gauge through comparing the difference in energy stars actually produce during this process, which some sources used by other creators display hydrogen 2 producing an electron volt, meaning that if you take the molar mass and convert it to joules per gram of hydrogen 2 undergoing fusion, the result would produce this number of joules, which is enough to take your average exhale to the amount of force required to blow up a building dozens of times over. If that tells you anything of what kind of amp was needed to beat Isshiki, whose abilities extend much further than basic movesets of either Kaguya or Momoshiki and what they display, with Isshiki's greatest strength not actually being his power, which remains in his dojutsu, but we might need to save that for their true interaction. The Dark Lord, believe it or not, is actually stated throughout omniscient guides alongside other pieces of media to be the Empire's ultimate and most powerful weapon, therefore placing Darth Vader above even the Death Star, which alone is capable of yielding enough energy to destroy a dwarf star through its iconic laser beam, which obliterates the planet Alderaan into dust. Which shouldn't sound absurd, considering more ancient Sith like Darth Nihilus being able to consume planets during the days of the Old Republic. So, Darth Vader possessing planet-busting and dwarf star levels of force behind his saber swings casually isn't actually that crazy. Furthermore, if you want to add consistency or higher levels of interpretation, they are very much accessible to the Dark Lord when recounting how in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, prior to drawing upon more power as Darth Vader, a Jedi Anakin could battle Count Dooku, with the novel confirming that Dooku wasn't willing to take chances, especially in front of Palpatine. Anakin beating the Dooku rather handily would also then mean that he was skilled at Dooku's summoning of power throughout the universe, as stated on 2 separate occasions, aiding the more common skepticism of this being a mere hyperbole. Now, on that note, Palpatine being directly in front of Dooku doesn't defeat this universal level of power, seeing as extra merchandise for the promotion of the Revenge of the Sith confirm Palpatine's ability to utilize, quote, near unstoppable force storms, which are essentially vast energy storms that connect wildly disparate spots across the galaxy, like an Einstein-Rosen bridge or wormhole per se. These hyperspace wormholes are unpredictable and devastating, and are actually stated in Michael Reeves and Steve Perry's Death Star novel to be a higher dimensional place, surpassing a third spatial and fourth temporal dimension, which in layman terms is just height, length, width, and then time. Even Force users, both Jedi and Sith alike, have been employed before to amass the full capacity of the Force, which has been described as higher dimensional, but I digress. Palpatine, much later and filled with immeasurable anger, is stated throughout omniscient guides to have control over his higher dimensional manipulating Force storms, despite being weaker than his Return of the Jedi counterpart and still needing several years to reach such a level, again as proclaimed in the Star Wars Fact File 120. In the Jedi vs. Sith, an essential guide to the Force, Vader is stated to be stronger than enough to kill Palpatine from that time period, befitting with how Vader, after engaging in an arduous battle with the strongest Jedi at that time, Luke Skywalker, whilst conflicted, he would be capable of surviving the full power Force lightning attack from Palpatine and throw his entire body whilst countless blue bolts of electricity viciously jolted throughout his body, both metal and flesh alike. Palpatine, in both the Revenge of the Sith and when he was sent his body to the Sith planet of Exegol, is stated to have the power of the dark side, which as a whole is implied numerous times to bind and permeate all things, supporting further that Palpatine and hence Vader have deeply intertwined scalings to these higher dimensional tiers of power. Therefore, whether either of us agree to Darth Vader being universal, the arguments certainly stand on their own 2 feet and should be considered as valid in at least concluding that Darth Vader's methods of universal scaling is more concrete in comparison to the Otsutsuki, who albeit could scale in similar regards in AP. However, in regards to speed, Lord Vader has much better ceilings. Throughout in nearly every scene, Darth Vader is reacting to some blaster lasers, which are stated to be intense beams of light in the Star Wars Ultimate Visual Guide, and light-speed invisible energy beams in a guidebook for the Attack of the Clones movie. Vader is capable of deflecting lasers from all sides with his lightsaber in the Dark Lord Rise of Darth Vader, and the Dark Lord would also upscale from Anakin in him being able to actually fully stop a cruiser at a specific point in hyperspace, which is calced at thousands of times the speed of light. And while sure, Anakin was being aided by both Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi, other characters like regular Han Solo can also react to these hyperspace MFTL plus speeds. Also, if you guys are enjoying the video, then I would like to ask if you guys would consider subscribing, as it helps the channel out probably more than you'd ever think, and it allows for you to see more content that you probably enjoy at no cost. But anyway, I think it's fair to say that KCM2 is a greater amp than CM2, and therefore KCM2 is at least a 10 times amp in speed, as we know Sasuke gets significantly faster whilst in CM2. The argument then follows by arguing base Naruto to be inferior to base Might Guy during the war arc, which is likely consistent as KCM1 Naruto and Guy were able to combo attack together against White Mask Obito. And with that, Guy's 8 gates technique is actually translated in the 4th data book to be an increase of dozens of times, relaying what Kakashi said about the gates in part 1. The key words for both statements being dozens, which obviously being plural, meaning at least 24 times, and Naruto's base 6 pass state is either shown relative to or greater to this 8th gates Guy at a bare minimum. This shouldn't surprise you either, seen as base 6 pass Naruto pressed Madara so much to where he instantaneously absorbed the God Tree out of fear of Naruto's power, making Naruto's base 6 pass amp 24 times as well. And then he stacks KCM2 onto that, creating 6 pass Sage Mode, making it a 240 times amp. And by recounting my previous points, you would then say that Naruto is just the speed of light from dodging the Raikage. You now have an adult Naruto to stack another 240 times on top of the previous 240 times, as we know that again, base Naruto as an adult is above the 6 pass Sage Mode Naruto that battled Kaguya as a teenager. So, pretty ridiculous numbers from Naruto's high-end scaling, and yes, there are higher ends, but as I did with the One Piece videos, I'm not really kind of saying whether I actually agree with this speed scaling for adult Naruto. I'm just kind of leaving it here, as this is also probably the best way for him to scale into FTL. Although it is seemingly quite the highball, but this at least grants it a ceiling for Naruto being in the MFTL plus range, and Momoshiki then being relative to this, and Isshiki above that, makes it seem that Darth Vader very well should be quite comparable to their stats through both speed and attack potency, with Vader's being a little bit more conservative. When Darth Vader killed Palpatine, his physical body exploded and he transformed into a dark side force ghost, basically, and traversed the galaxy from the planet Endor for about a year until ultimately reaching his cloning laboratories on the planet Biss. And the distance here has been calculated to 120,000 light years, and this speed for Palpatine being dozens of thousands of times the speed of light to reach that distance in a year, and therefore grounding them to MFTL plus again. Lastly, while yes, it's probably already agreed upon that Vader is faster, Isshiki shouldn't be downplayed from Naruto's performance against Madara's Light Fang, as much more goes into that feat regarding Naruto's elasticity and acceleration, but I've touched on that before, so let's run through how the Dark Lord would go about dealing with the Otsutsuki, beginning with the Mother of Chakra, Kaguya. Now, unfortunately for Kaguya, which would also track for the other following members, she primarily piggybacks off being innately stronger than her opponent, and her rather basic abilities then allow for her to completely overwhelm them through attacks like her Vacuum Fist that could overpower Naruto, who albeit was weaker, but was still able to hold it off, as again, it alone isn't an attack vastly above Kaguya, for example. Her other attacks like the chakra hands used on Sakura or her dimensional swap won't really work on the Dark Lord, whose physical superiority would shine even more prominently throughout Kaguya doesn't even scale to an adult-based Naruto, and therefore doesn't actually have any treasured method of getting her to MFTL plus or even being in the same tier as Vader. So he should be able to use his massively greater stats to then utilize basic abilities, whether it be his Force Choke or lightsaber attacks, to then kill her. Momoshiki, the superior to Kaguya, is albeit much stronger, but still suffers painfully from his lack of physical superiority, as this was even prevalent in battles against Naruto, who could absolutely throttle him in hand-to-hand combat skill, as Momoshiki's character didn't care about the quality of training, but rather the quantity of power. Whereas Darth Vader was capable of hastily dismantling the top Imperial Guard, who even the weakest of are stated to master every conceivable weapon and known hand-to-hand combat style. I'm telling you guys, Vader has hands like Muhammad Ali. Anyway, Momoshiki also is a pretty bad match stylistically. Lastly, for Isshiki, the most valuable Otsutsuki mentioned so far, his ability to quickly change any fight through his ability to shrink objects is nothing to scoff at. He's capable of shrinking deadly rods to then place them into Naruto and Sasuke, or he could then enlarge them internally to destroy you from the inside out. However, if Vader notices Isshiki's moves, then it's basically endgame, as he could then use the Force to blast them back if he isn't fully aware. However, if Vader were to try and hurl debris towards Isshiki, he could just shrink it and then blast it right back, as shown with the Jonin and their shuriken when he appears in Konoha. However, this tactic does allow Isshiki to get caught by characters like Boruto when disguised, as it gives the illusion of a non-organic thing when in fact it's a person. So if Vader were to utilize a similar strategy and bank on Isshiki using this on his metal body parts, his live ones would then just catch him off guard. There are also many implications in Legends that Vader even has the ability to inject infinity into one's mind, which is stupid, but he just has tons of other numerous abilities that might also not be necessary with his superior stats. So in conclusion, the Dark Lord should be able to hunt down the Otsutsuki and slay them despite their nearly unrivaled power in the Naruto verse. But what did you guys think? As I am genuinely curious, I love hearing your guys' thoughts, but more importantly than that, God bless you all. Love you guys.